I had barely stepped through the ballroom doors when the woman in pearls laughed and said, "Well, at least the caterer finally made it." People chuckled. Not at someone else, at me. I was standing 3 feet behind her, holding a wedding gift for my daughter. She turned, saw my face, and for a moment looked embarrassed. Then she smiled, the kind of smile worn by someone who has never feared consequences. That woman was about to become my daughter's mother-in-law. I almost turned around and walked straight back out through those doors. One step and I would have been gone. But 3 weeks earlier, a secret had surfaced. A secret her family had spent years hiding behind expensive clothes, charity events, and carefully practiced smiles. Before that evening was over, everyone in that ballroom would learn the truth. And the first person to stand up wasn't me. My daughter's hand touched my arm before I could leave. "Mom, please stay." There was something strange in her voice. Not panic, not fear. Something else. Something I couldn't name. She disappeared into the crowd before I could ask a single question. I stood there, alone, holding that gift box, trying to understand what had just happened. For a moment, I almost followed her. Then I stopped myself. Olivia had never asked me for anything without a reason. I walked slowly to my seat near the back of the room. I kept my eyes forward. I kept my expression steady. I had spent 67 years learning how to carry pain without showing it. This was just one more room, one more moment. I looked around the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers, expensive dresses, waiters carrying silver trays. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Silverware clinked against plates. Someone laughed too loudly near the bar. Everything polished until it gleamed. Nobody said anything to me after that first comment, but a few people avoided looking at me directly. Somehow that hurt more than the words themselves. You can defend yourself against cruelty. You cannot defend yourself against being invisible. For a second, I wished Walter were standing beside me. My husband had a way of making every room feel smaller and every problem feel manageable. He had been gone 5 years, but moments like this still reminded me how much space his absence occupied. Victoria Sterling moved from table to table collecting compliments the way some people collect jewelry. Grant Sterling stood near the bar, loving the sound of his own voice. Their son Mason smiled at everyone without ever saying anything real. I had never trusted that smile. I just never said so out loud. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Olivia wasn't watching her groom. She was watching her parents, carefully, the way you watch something you already know is dangerous. She held a small folder pressed against her side. When she noticed me looking, she shifted it quickly behind her. A few minutes later, she crossed the room and leaned close enough that nobody else could hear. Her hands were shaking. "Mom," she whispered, "I found something." She glanced once toward the Sterling family, then back at me. For the first time all day, I saw fear in her eyes. If I'm right, this wedding can't happen. And suddenly, neither could my heartbeat. I followed her without asking where we were going. That was enough. The music from the ballroom faded behind us as Olivia led me down a quiet hallway and into a small, empty room near the side entrance. She closed the door carefully, not loudly, the way you close a door when you don't want anyone to notice. For a moment, she just stood there with her back against it. The folder was still in her hands. Her knuckles were white. "Olivia." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Tell me what's happening." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she walked to the small table in the corner and set the folder down. She opened it slowly, and she pointed to the name printed at the top of the first page. My name, Naomi Carter. I stepped closer. The page was covered in numbers, maps, and handwritten notes I didn't immediately understand. But my name was there, clear, centered, unmistakable. "Where did you get this?" I asked. Olivia pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. Her wedding dress pooled around her feet like something borrowed from another life. 3 weeks ago, she said quietly, I was in Mason's office looking for a phone charger. I wasn't searching for anything. I wasn't suspicious. She paused. And then I saw this folder sitting open on his desk. I looked at the pages again. Property survey, land valuation, a map I recognized immediately, the shape of every fence line, every field, every acre. Our farm, the farm Walter and I had built together. "Why is my land in this folder?" I asked. Olivia didn't answer right away. That silence was its own kind of answer. Wanted to believe Mason didn't know, she finally said. She looked down at the folder. Then she found emails he had forwarded himself. My stomach tightened. And after that, I couldn't make excuses for him anymore. The past tense of that sentence landed quietly between us. Wanted, not wants. She slid the first page toward me. It was an email, short, formal, between two names I didn't recognize, but one line near the bottom stopped everything. Property acquisition timeline dependent on family connection being secured before Q3. I read it twice. Then she slid a second page beside it, this one shorter, just 3 lines, but one of them hit harder than everything before it. Once the marriage is finalized, access becomes significantly easier. I set both pages down carefully, the way you set something down when your hands have started shaking and you don't want anyone to notice. I looked at my daughter sitting across from me in her wedding dress. I thought about our kitchen table, the one Walter had built himself from reclaimed wood the year Olivia was born, the one where we had eaten every important meal of our lives together, every birthday, every crisis, every ordinary Tuesday. That land wasn't acreage to us. It was every season Walter had ever worked, every morning he had walked those fields before sunrise, every single year we had chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. They were discussing our farm, I said slowly, before Mason ever proposed to you. Olivia nodded, one quiet nod. I felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter than anger. I looked at my daughter. She was watching me carefully, the way she had watched me at Walter's funeral, making sure I wasn't going to fall. Then she reached into the folder one final time. Her fingers were trembling. She slid the last page slowly across the table, without saying a word. I looked down at it. I read it once. Then I read it again. "Mom," Olivia said quietly. Her eyes had filled with tears. They weren't just planning to take the farm. I looked up at her. The wedding music continued playing faintly down the hallway, as if nothing had changed, as if the world was exactly as it had been an hour ago. "What could possibly be worse than this?" I asked. Olivia didn't answer. She just looked at me across that small table and waited for me to finish reading. I read the last page twice. Then I set it down on the table and sat very still. The document wasn't about the farm, not really. The farm was just the beginning. What the final page outlined was something much quieter and much more calculated. Estate planning access, financial decision authority, long-term asset control, all of it tied to one thing: marriage. Our farm wasn't the target. I was. I looked up at Olivia. She was watching me with the same expression she had worn at her father's funeral, waiting. making sure I wasn't going to break. "They didn't choose you because they loved you," I said slowly. The words felt strange leaving my mouth, like something that couldn't be unsaid. Olivia nodded once. Her hands were folded in her lap, very still, very controlled. "Mason didn't fall in love with me," she said quietly. "He was introduced to me." I looked at my daughter, sitting across that small table in her wedding dress, 32 years old, Walter's eyes, my stubbornness, every good thing we had ever tried to give her. And somewhere along the way, someone had looked at her and seen nothing but a door to walk through. She wasn't loved. She was selected. That realization hurt in a place I didn't have words for. "What do we do?" Olivia asked. I looked at the documents spread across the table. Then I looked at my daughter. "We go back in there," I said, "and we tell the truth. No plan, no strategy, no revenge. Just that." Olivia nodded slowly. She straightened her dress. She picked up the folder, and together we walked back down the hallway toward the sound of music and laughter, and a room full of people who had no idea what was about to happen. The ballroom looked exactly as we had left it. Crystal chandeliers, silver trays, guests laughing, Grant Sterling near the bar, Victoria collecting compliments, Mason smiling at someone across the room. That smile I had never trusted. Now I understood why. Grant had just stood to give a speech when Olivia touched my arm once and walked forward, not toward me, toward the microphone. Grant handed it over with a confused smile. The room gradually quieted. "Before this evening continues," Olivia said calmly, "there are a few things the people in this room deserve to know." Victoria's smile disappeared. Mason frowned. Olivia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply read specific lines from specific emails, dates, phrases, one document connecting the proposal timeline directly to financial planning meetings that had happened months before Mason had ever mentioned love or marriage or a future together. The room grew quieter with every word. Guests exchanged glances. A few investors near the front leaned forward. Somewhere near the back of the room, a champagne glass was set down too hard against a table. Then Olivia read the final line, the one about estate access being significantly easier once the marriage was finalized. Complete silence. Mason stepped forward. Everyone expected a denial, an explanation, an apology. Instead, he looked at Olivia and said, "You don't understand how much money was involved." The room didn't gasp. It went still, the kind of still that is worse than any reaction, because in that moment, everyone understood exactly who he was. No police, no arrests, no dramatic scene. Just the truth sitting in the middle of a ballroom while people decided what to do with it. The first investor stood, quietly, and left. Then another. Grant started toward Olivia, but stopped when 3 business associates turned away from him mid-sentence. Mason stood alone near the front of the table, looking at the folder in Olivia's hands as if he could somehow take back every word inside it. He couldn't. Then I noticed movement near the front table. An older woman slowly rose from her seat. I had seen her laughing with Victoria earlier that evening. The woman didn't speak. She didn't look angry. She didn't look shocked. She simply looked at Victoria, the way people look at someone they no longer recognize. Then she quietly picked up her purse, removed her place card from the table, and walked out without saying a word. Victoria watched her go, and for the first time all evening, she looked completely alone.
Some silences say everything. In the weeks that followed, the engagement ended. Investors withdrew. 2 business partnerships dissolved without public explanation. The Sterling name stopped opening certain doors it had always opened before. I didn't follow the details closely. I had spent enough of my life paying attention to people who measured everything by money. I had better things to do. One evening, I was sitting on the back porch watching the sun go down. Olivia had come by earlier to help repair a section of fence near the old oak tree. She had stayed for dinner. She had laughed at something small and ordinary, and for a moment she had looked exactly like herself again. Not the version of herself that had been chosen and calculated and fitted into someone else's plan. Just Olivia, my daughter. After she left, I sat alone as the sky turned gold and the crickets started up in the distance. They thought they were taking our future. What they actually did was show me exactly who deserved a place in it. For the first time in weeks, the future felt larger than the damage they had tried to cause. The field stretched out ahead of me in the fading light, quiet and unchanged, and somewhere in that quiet, I felt him smiling.